Sometimes relationships don't fall apart because of cheating. Sometimes they fall apart because love slowly turns into control. Tiny ultimatums, emotional pressure, constant tests of loyalty. And eventually, someone wakes up realizing they've spent years sacrificing pieces of themselves just to keep the relationship alive. Tonight's story isn't about obvious abuse. It's about blurred lines, family loyalty, emotional isolation, and the terrifying moment someone realizes love may have quietly become conditional. Welcome back to Broken Vows. My fiancé looked me dead in the eyes and told me to choose her or my parents. No discussion, no compromise, no hesitation allowed. And honestly, that should have made the answer obvious. But after 9 years together, nothing felt obvious anymore. Ansé and I have been together for almost a decade. 9 years. We've lived together for 5. We're financially independent. We built an entire life together. And for most of our relationship, I genuinely believed we were solid. Not perfect, but stable. Then somehow our relationship turned to an endless war over my parents. And honestly, the terrifying part is that I still don't fully know whether I'm being manipulated or if she is. According to my fiancé, my parents are controlling people, manipulative, self-centered, emotionally toxic. But the examples she gives honestly confuse me. Things like my dad saying, "Why don't you stay another minute?" Or, "Maybe try doing it this way." To her, those comments are proof they're controlling me emotionally. And look, I won't pretend my parents were perfect. Growing up, they were definitely authoritative, emotionally distant too, honestly. I even admitted to her years ago that I sometimes felt disconnected from them emotionally because of how strict they were. And maybe that confession changed the way she viewed them forever. Because after that, every interaction became evidence. Every small comment, every suggestion, every awkward family moment. To her, it all meant manipulation. Over time, things slowly escalated. At first, it was small boundaries, then bigger ones. Eventually, she stopped wanting to attend family lunches altogether. Birthdays, holidays, celebrations didn't matter. And honestly, I went along with most of it. For over 3 years, we haven't attended a single family lunch together. Not birthdays, not holidays, nothing. We only visited my parents briefly every 2 or 3 weeks, just sitting, talking, normal visits, no screaming, no insults, no massive drama, and still, it was never enough. Honestly, I think one of the scariest things about controlling relationships is how gradually they evolve. Because isolation rarely begins with, cut everyone off immediately. It usually starts with emotional pressure, tiny sacrifices, small ultimatums, little tests of loyalty, until eventually you wake up one day realizing your entire world has quietly shrunk around one person. Then came the moment that honestly broke something inside me. She told me directly, "I will not be a second choice, and I will not be an option you hesitate to choose." Then came the ultimatum, her or my parents. Completely cut them off. No compromise, no alternatives, no discussion. And the worst part? When I hesitated, even for a moment, she took that as proof I loved them more than her, after everything I'd already sacrificed. And honestly, this is where my brain started spiraling. Because while I was expected to cut off my parents completely, she still worked with her father every single day. They talked constantly. We visited her parents often. We stayed at their vacation home together. And I genuinely liked her parents. I never tried controlling that relationship. I never demanded she choose me over them. But somehow, the same standard didn't apply to me. And the more I thought about it, the more emotionally trapped I started feeling. Recently, my dad had a birthday. I visited him alone for barely over an hour. That's it. No party, no huge gathering, no emotional reunion, just one short visit. And somehow, that alone nearly ended my engagement. Because to her, the fact I even went at all meant I was still choosing my parents emotionally. And honestly, that realization scared me. Because I started wondering, would there ever be enough sacrifice to finally prove loyalty to her? Or would the line keep moving forever? That's the part nobody understands. This isn't some simple situation where I'm desperately attached to toxic parents. The truth is, I actually am emotionally distant from them compared to most families. We barely see each other. We don't talk constantly. I already sacrificed a huge amount of that relationship over the years. But completely erasing them from my life, pretending they no longer exist, something inside me can't fully do that. And honestly, I don't even know if that makes me weak or sane. I think people underestimate how psychologically damaging ultimatums can become in relationships. Because once love turns into prove your loyalty by cutting people off, the relationship stops feeling emotionally safe. It starts feeling conditional, transactional. Like affection only exists as long as obedience does. And honestly, that changes the emotional atmosphere of a relationship permanently. The most confusing part. What makes this situation even harder is that my fiancée isn't some obvious villain. She genuinely believes she's protecting me. She believes my parents manipulated me emotionally for years. And maybe part of that is true, but at the same time, her solution feels extreme. Because every compromise I offered got rejected. Visit less? No. Go alone occasionally? No. Let her avoid them while I maintain minimal contact? No. The only acceptable answer was complete emotional exile. And the longer this argument dragged on, the more exhausted I became. Not angry, exhausted. Because eventually you stop debating the actual issue and start mourning the relationship itself. Honestly, I think what scares me most is realizing that marriage hasn't even started yet, and already I'm being asked to emotionally amputate pieces of my life to keep the relationship alive. Because if this becomes the standard now, what happens later? Friends, coworkers, future disagreements? Where does it stop? And once that thought entered my head, I couldn't unsee it anymore. The strangest part is, I still love her deeply. That's what makes this hurt so much. Because if I didn't love her, the answer would be easy. But love makes people tolerate emotional situations they would normally recognize as unhealthy immediately. And honestly, I think that's where I'm stuck now. Somewhere between guilt, fear, loyalty, and emotional confusion. Trying to figure out whether protecting my relationship means sacrificing my boundaries, or finally realizing I'm allowed to have some. Maybe relationships aren't destroyed only by betrayal. Maybe sometimes they're destroyed by control disguised as love, or loyalty tested so aggressively that eventually the relationship itself starts suffocating underneath it. And honestly, I still don't know what decision I'm going to make. But I do know one thing now. Any relationship that demands absolute isolation as proof of love eventually forces someone to lose themselves completely. So tell me honestly, if your partner demanded you completely cut off your family, would you see that as loyalty or control? And honestly, I think this is what makes emotional control so difficult to recognize, because it rarely starts with screaming. It starts with small sacrifices. Skip this family event. Stop seeing this person. Choose me first. Prove your loyalty. And if someone truly loves their partner, they usually comply little by little without realizing how much of themselves they're slowly giving away. That's what makes these situations psychologically messy. Because sometimes the controlling person genuinely believes they're protecting the relationship, while the other person slowly starts feeling emotionally trapped inside it. I didn't think my marriage was falling apart. Not really. But somewhere between the drunk late-night phone calls, the unanswered questions, and hearing my wife laugh over loud music in downtown Nashville, I started realizing something terrifying. Sometimes relationships don't break because someone cheats. Sometimes they break because two people slowly stop agreeing on what loyalty even looks like anymore. My wife and I have been together for a long time. Married, kids, mortgage, normal life. And honestly, we've always had a really solid relationship. One of the biggest reasons was because we had boundaries that worked for us. Not toxic rules, not controlling behavior, just mutual understandings. One of those understandings was simple. Bars and clubs weren't really something we did without each other. That was actually more her idea in the beginning. And over the years, it just became part of our relationship dynamic. We still took solo trips with friends sometimes, guys' trips, girls' trips, but they were usually normal stuff. Camping, hiking, sightseeing, outdoor activities, not nightlife, not bar hopping. And honestly, I trusted her completely. That's what makes this whole thing so confusing, because this isn't really about cheating. At least, I don't think it is. Recently, my wife went on a girls' trip to Nashville and the Kentucky Derby. At first, I didn't think much of it. Sounded fun, normal. But after she got there, things started feeling off. Every day, we barely talked. Maybe 30 seconds total, and every single phone call felt rushed, distracted, like her attention was somewhere else the entire time. Then I started noticing something else. Every time she called me, she was around other people. Always noise in the background, always friends nearby, always chaos around her. There was never a moment where she stepped away just to actually talk to me. And late at night, she'd call sounding drunk. Not blackout drunk, but definitely buzzed, slurring slightly, laughing differently, talking fast. And every conversation ended almost immediately because she was tired and heading to bed. At first, I tried ignoring the feeling in my stomach. I told myself, "You're overthinking this." But then eventually, I found out they'd been going downtown bar hopping, mild clubs, nightlife, drinking spots all over Nashville. And honestly, that hit me way harder than I expected. Because technically, she didn't really break any clearly spoken rule. We never specifically discussed this exact trip beforehand. But at the same time, we absolutely had an understanding. At least I thought we did. And that's what's been eating at me ever since. Because relationship boundaries are weird. Sometimes they aren't written contracts. Sometimes they're just years of mutual behavior that quietly becomes part of the relationship itself. And when one person suddenly changes that dynamic without discussing it, it creates this horrible emotional uncertainty. Not betrayal exactly, but something adjacent to it. Honestly, I think one of the hardest parts about long-term relationships is realizing that boundaries evolve silently over time. And if couples stop checking in with each other emotionally, eventually one person starts operating under an entirely different understanding than the other. That's when resentment starts growing. Not because someone necessarily cheated, but because emotional expectations stopped matching reality. Eventually, I brought it up to her. And honestly, I expected at least some understanding. Maybe something like, "Yeah, I can see why that bothered you." Instead, she completely stood her ground. She insisted she did nothing wrong. According to her, going downtown bar hopping was basically no different than having dinner somewhere that served alcohol. And technically, maybe she's right, but emotionally, it didn't feel the same to me at all. Because this wasn't just grabbing food somewhere casual. This was nightlife. Drinking, bars, late nights, crowded downtown clubs. Exactly the kind of thing we'd quietly agreed wasn't part of our solo trips years ago. And suddenly, I started questioning everything. Not whether she cheated, but whether we still viewed our marriage the same way anymore. And honestly, that uncertainty is brutal, because once your brain starts questioning relationship boundaries, every tiny detail suddenly feels suspicious. Why were the calls so short? Why was she always around people? Why did she never step away to talk privately? Why did she sound drunk almost every night? And the dangerous part is, your mind starts trying to build a story out of incomplete information. That's when paranoia starts creeping in, even if you trust the person. And I do trust her. At least, I want to. I think what scares me most is that this entire argument has made me realize something uncomfortable. Maybe this isn't really about Nashville at all. Maybe it's about feeling emotionally disconnected from someone you're supposed to feel safest with. Because when your partner suddenly does something that feels outside the normal boundaries of your relationship, and then completely dismisses your feelings afterward, it creates emotional distance incredibly fast. Not because of the bars themselves, but because suddenly you stop feeling emotionally understood. And honestly, that feeling is lonely as hell inside a marriage. I think people online oversimplify relationship boundaries constantly. Some couples are perfectly fine with solo partying, some aren't. Neither is automatically wrong. The important part is whether both people still feel emotionally respected inside the agreement they built together. Because once one partner starts feeling like the relationship rules quietly changed without discussion, trust starts becoming unstable. And unstable trust creates anxiety fast. Since the argument, things have felt weird between us. Not explosive, not screaming, honestly, That almost would have been easier. Instead, it's been quiet, polite, careful, like we're both trying not to accidentally make things worse. And somehow, that emotional tension feels heavier than the argument itself, because now I'm stuck wondering, am I overreacting? Or am I realizing that our relationship boundaries aren't as mutual as I thought they were? And honestly, I still don't fully know the answer. The bigger question. I think what hurts most is realizing how fragile emotional safety can become once doubt enters the relationship. Not cheating, not betrayal, just doubt. Because once doubt appears, your brain starts replaying every interaction differently. Every short phone call, every delayed text, every moment that suddenly feels emotionally off. And even if nothing physically happened, the emotional discomfort still becomes real. Honestly, I still trust my wife. I don't think she cheated on me. But I also don't think my feelings are completely irrational either, because relationships aren't only built on fidelity, they're also built on shared understandings. And when those understandings suddenly become blurry, people stop feeling emotionally secure with each other. Maybe that's what scares me most. Not the bars, not the nightlife, not even Nashville itself, but the realization that two people can be married for years and still slowly drift into completely different definitions of what respect, boundaries, and loyalty are supposed to look like. So tell me honestly, would this situation bother you too? Or do you think boundaries like this become unreasonable in long-term marriages? Honestly, I don't think this story is really about parents. I think it's about boundaries. Because there's a massive difference between protecting your relationship and demanding someone erase parts of their life to prove love. And once relationships start turning into loyalty tests, emotional safety slowly disappears. That's when love starts feeling less like partnership and more like obedience. So tell me honestly, if your partner demanded you completely cut off your family, would you see that as protecting the relationship or controlling it? And more importantly, where do you think the line exists between healthy boundaries and emotional isolation? If you enjoyed tonight's story, don't forget to subscribe to Broken Vows for more dark, emotional relationship stories every week.